Hi guys, welcome. It's Thursday 2 o'clock and as promised I'm here doing a seminar all about how to reduce pain. If you tuned in yesterday, we did a video about how pain works, about how chronic pain works. You may have seen me using a lemon and 2 spoons to explain how nerve signals cross synapses. And one of the cool things we talked about yesterday was how you end up in a cycle of pain where you get maybe an original incident which causes signals that flow through your nervous system and trigger the experience of pain. But what should happen is that acute pain, so when you tread on a pin or you hurt yourself, bruise yourself, that goes. Chronic pain is where the cycle starts to set itself up when there's no longer any incident, the problem is healed, it's gone. And what you've got here is signals coming down the nervous system, jumping across synapses, going up to the brain, which then sends signals back down to the area. And those signals going back down to the area can often produce some of the inflammation substances like substance P. And if you keep on wiring this particular pathway, keep on using that pathway, so the pathway from the injured area or to the injured area from the brain, because the brain tells the body what to do as well as listens to it, then you start to get changes in how the synapses are. So instead of being a wide gap for the signal to jump across, the gap becomes very small. You get changes in things like the glial cells, the little cells whose job is to support and take care of the nerves, start to go a bit rogue and start to produce inflammatory properties and neurotransmitters and all sorts of stuff. It all gets very complicated, but basically what happens is the more you use those pathways, the more they get used. And the more they're easy to use, and the more they fire. And then what happens is the firing pathway that comes down from the brain triggers the pathway in the hand, and you get this looping. So even if you chopped your hand off or you didn't have a hand, and this happens in phantom limb pain, the pathway would still be looping. And it's a bit like Jimi Hendrix. If you know about Jimi Hendrix, he took his guitar and he put his guitar close to the amp. And what happened then is the signal from the guitar goes round down the cable into the amp, comes out, and then goes back and vibrates the strings of the guitar, which then goes back into the amp, and that produces the whistling feedback. And to some extent, that's what chronic pain is. What has happened is the brain has got into a cycle all of its own. So with Jimi Hendrix, he could start the guitar, put it close to the amp, and he could walk off the stage and the sound would still continue. Because even though he's not playing the guitar anymore, there's this loop that's going on. So this is what's happening in chronic pain. Even if there may be still some slight injury there, what's left is this massive overload, this whirling, swirling cycle of pain. So then the question is, as we talked about this last time, what do we do to stop it? Well, by understanding, this is one of the questions I asked you yesterday, if there's a cycle of pain going on, if the actual original incident has now gone, and what you're left with is this echo within the system, which still feels exactly the same, it's no less painful than the original incident, because you experience exactly the same, but it's now just a sound reverberating consistently in the system. A bit like, we talked about this yesterday, a bit like a memory. If you have a really strong memory, that can evoke, upset or joy, even though you're not in that place where it originally happened. We can just trigger it. So we're left with this trigger. So the question I asked you last time was, what do we do about that? Based on that, what do you think we need to do? And there's a few things, a few pointers I led you towards yesterday, which I'm going to cover. So the first thing, and we've got a little mnemonic for you here, and the mnemonic is you might hear the little dog trotting in. Hello, little dog. You can't see her on the thing, but she's just down there wagging her tail. So you have a little thing to remember. The first is L, which is look at your language. Okay. So with your language, what you need to do is you need to start to notice, what are you talking about? We just had a question here about what about chronic inflammation? Well, interestingly, with chronic inflammation, it runs on the same pathway. When you have pain, it produces chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation causes pain, pain causes chronic inflammation, so you get into this cycle where nothing recovers. With chronic inflammation, there's some other stuff going on that we're not particularly talking about today because we're talking about pain, although the two things are linked. With chronic inflammation, you also get an activation of the sympathetic nervous system, which then affects the immune system. So you get a chemical thing as well as the neurological. But the thing we're looking at today is pain. The first thing we say is we need to be aware of our language. There's some really interesting research that says if you put someone in a brain scanner and you give them a deck of cards, 2 decks of cards, one just containing things you buy in the supermarket, avocados, bananas, and the other one with words related to pain, like burning, intense, or pain, then when people are randomly given one of these cards from one of the 2 decks, either the vegetables, the groceries, or the pain words, if you give them one from the pain deck, then you'll see a triggering. Just by reading the word, you'll see a triggering of the parts of the brain that process pain, which you don't get if you see the word avocado. You don't get the same response. So this is a huge issue, because this means every single time we talk about pain, which I've just done about 100 times in the last 2 videos, every time you think about it, you're actually triggering that cycle that is already very, very evolved and fast running, and neuroplastically the nerves have got very close together. So that system is already on a hair trigger. Every time you have one of those thoughts, every time you have one of those words, so the conversation maybe with your doctor, how are you feeling, I've got pain, every time that happens, that will once again turn that cycle. And that's a nightmare, because of course, if you have pain, you're going to be thinking about it. You're going to be talking about it. But one of the things we recommend is start to be aware when you're doing it, and start to swap it, because other words do not, like avocado, do not trigger pain. So have a think about it. What is a word that would be good to use instead of the P word, instead of pain? What would be a useful word to use? Often when we say to people, what do you want? They say, I don't want pain. But as soon as they say that, they're winding up that nervous system that was already very, very fast and very hot. If you want to put that down a comment, what is the answer to the question, what do you want if you don't want pain? Without using the word pain. And I've talked about this a lot. I've lectured loads of doctors and consultants on this, and they can't work out what the answer is, because they spend so much time thinking about how do we get rid of the pain, how do we stop the pain, how do we mask the pain, how do we sedate the pain. But notice that P word popping up every single time. So I'm guessing most of you guys are watching have some relationship to this particular P word. So we're going to try and not use it from now on, even though we're going to be talking about it, or talking about changing it. So what I recommend you do is, instead of using the word pain, is you use the word comfort, or use the word supple, or relaxed, or at ease. There's a range of words that we can use, but it's really, really important to start noticing how much of the time you've been unintentionally triggering those pathways, and how you can switch. Just simply switch the pathways by using different words. Imagine you're someone with a phobia of needles, right? If I come in and say, hey, I'm going to give you an injection with this needle, it's not very big, it's not going to hurt a lot. Notice the words needle, big, and hurt will fire up your neurology. And it's exactly the same with somebody who's been experiencing low levels of comfort. Do you notice how I explained it in that way this time? So start to think about what words you could use. And also notice how many times you've been using the other kind of words, the words that produce symptoms. Because if the problem is no longer, say, in the hand, it's now in this neurological cycle, then anything you can do to stop that neurology from firing will be really, really valuable. So words or language is the first thing. The next thing, so the acronym we're going to use is LIFT, so L-I-F-T. L is for language. Check out your language. Second one, I. I is thinking about, if we understand pain, and this is what the research is saying, pain is not here, pain is in your brain, pain is in your neurology, then that allows us to recognize we can have an impact, we can have an influence, and that's what's the I for, impact and influence, that we can make a difference. This is our nervous system, and there's lots of stuff that we can do to start to settle that down. Usually when we talk about not having comfort, we feel like it's a thing that somebody needs to come and fix, like it's an object, but it's not. It's a process. It's an ongoing active process. The signals have to jump the gap, they have to run up to your brain, they have to run down various nerve pathways. There's a constant process going on, And this, if you've done the lightning process, is where we use the DU with the circumflex, which talks about how everything in the body is a process, even bones, bizarrely enough. Think about a bone, solid old thing. Bones are not solid old things. They're constantly being remodeled and regrown. We have little cells called osteoblast and osteoclast, and they come along and they munch up the old bone and they lay down new bone. It's always ongoing. So even stuff like our bones are really a process, a very slow process, but it's still a process. The body is not like something solid. It's an energetic, moving, living thing. And pain is very much one of those things, those pathways. Do you know, so I sneaked into saying the word there. The pathways that we're looking at are just pathways that we're activating. We don't mean to, but we are activating. There are pathways. But it's our pathway, what we can do to influence that. And one of the things is change your language. Second thing is to realise that you have influence. It's very easy when you've had this for a long time to feel there's no way through it. You know, how am I ever going to get rid of this thing? But actually start to see it as a process. Start to see it as a cycle that you're in, and that will really help. The next thing is F, isn't it? A lift, which is focus. Which is, where is your focus? Now, neurologically, wherever you've been having issues or problems, the chances are that will be massively well represented. There's a thing called a homunculus. Homunculuses are representations of the brain. They're little men, like a little tiny model of a man or a woman. And what they do is they make each part of the body the same size as the amount of brain space that is devoted to it. So if you see a homunculus of a human brain, it shows you that we have big lips because they're really well innervated. We have a big nose because we take a lot of information from smell, and from our eyes, and from our hands are huge. Much less so on our back. We don't get much information, mostly from our back, and so on. What's interesting is in people who've got symptoms in a particular area, let's say again it's your hand, and if we were to see a little model of your brain, the hand that was fine would be normal sized. The hand that's got symptoms coming from it would be huge, because our brain becomes very, very attentive to these areas. What we need to do then is we need to change this neurology again by directing our focus somewhere else. Coming back to focus and language, one of the other things that people will do is they'll constantly check to see if things are better. Is this making a difference? And when they do that, very often what they'll do is they'll check by going, how much pain have I got? But as soon as they do that, they're rewiring their brain, they're refocusing, and they're thinking about the thing we don't want them to be thinking about. We want them to be breaking that cycle, not putting any more signals down that, and move into different pathways. So really check out for that. As you notice change, start to notice what has changed. Oh, it feels more comfortable, or I'm more aware of this hand, rather than I'm not feeling as much pain, or because as soon as you do that, that will re-trigger the pathways. So you can see there's a balancing act to be had, and unfortunately, just because of the way the brain is, the more we use pathways, the stronger they get. If you've used a pathway that's related to symptoms, then which we do naturally, because we think about it all the time, that strengthens that pathway, and that really works against us. So it's thinking about, okay, so what can we do to move ourselves into different pathways? So I'm going to just get you to do this for a second. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to focus on some very particular areas of your body, completely and fully. I'd like you to just pay attention right now to the second toe, so not the big one, but the one next to it, on your right foot. Really focus on that. And what I'd like you to do is just put it on the floor and to notice where that toe touches the floor, and to notice how that toe touches the one to the left of it and the one to the right of it. I want you to just notice the temperature of that toe, how big it feels, what the surface is like underneath. To really focus your attention there, and then having done that, I'd like you to focus on the heel of the other foot, the back of the heel. Really focus that, where that touches the floor. And where the end of the heel is and where the front of the heel is, where it meets the sole of the foot. Really focus on that heel. Then what I'd like you to do is to then shift your focus to this ear. Really notice the top of this ear. Your ear, not my ear. Really focus that here. Feel what that feels like. Then what I'd like you to do is to notice the feeling just at the back of this elbow. Really focus on that. Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it smooth? Is it rough? You can feel it. Now, as we've done that and we've focused our attention on those things, the way the brain works is there's only a limited amount of attention. They reckon it's about 7 pieces of information that we can focus on at any point in time. If we focus you in detail on other parts of your body and you really focus on that, then what that will do is it will stop pouring neurological signals and energy into the old pathway we want to shut up, we want to sedate. And so that's a good part of training, is to bring yourself into noticing other parts of your body that feel fine. How did you find that? Just put some notes down for me as you notice what it feels like to put your attention into different parts of your body. Because naturally, when you put all your attention into the second toe of your right foot, there isn't any brain space left to think about your hand. So by doing that, not only do you get a degree of comfort by doing that, but also really importantly what you're doing is rewiring your brain by saying, I'm going this way now instead of the normal cycle that you've been in. And the final thing, the T of this LIFT acronym, so L is for language, I is for impact or influence, F is for focus, and T is for taking yourself back. This is an important thing we do in the lightning process, which is there's some really great research now that says when we access a memory, we are triggering pathways often that we don't access, and they have a direct neurological and physiological effect on your body. So there's a excellent, thanks Zelda for noticing how it's changing. The effect of memories is really powerful. There's some interesting studies by a lady called Megan Spear just coming out at the moment. Not many people have done much work on it, but they found that if you take yourself back to a memory, a happy memory in this case, then when you stress yourself, so say plunging your hand into a bucket of cold water, then instead of there being a big spike of cortisol, there's a much smaller. So it doesn't produce this big response, it produces an attenuated response. So our response to stress, for instance, is changed just by remembering happy thoughts. There's some other research just come out about running, that if you run and you smile as you run, and you genuinely smile, not only do you feel happier, your muscles are much more effective at running. So it has a direct effect on your physiology. So what I'd like you to do is just take yourself back, just for a minute, to somewhere where you felt not just happy, but really healthy and really well. Now, what's interesting about taking yourself back to a time when you're happy and healthy and well is mostly when we're happy and healthy and well, we don't notice it. In fact, an interesting thing, we have amnesia and anesthesia for most of our body most of the time. You know, put your jeans on in the morning or your socks on in the morning, you feel them initially, but after a while they just disappear. The same with, you know, necklaces, glasses, earrings, most of them, watches, rings, we don't feel them most of the time. Our body switches them on. In the same way, when we think about a time when we're healthy, we probably didn't notice it because we didn't notice our body. Most of the time we're unaware of our body, and that's kind of how it should be. It's a bit like when you're driving a car, you're not completely focused on every single wheel, you're just driving. So what I'd like you to do then is to think about a time when you're healthy and well, but it may not be a time when you noticed you were healthy and well, but you must have been because of what you were doing. Maybe you were snowboarding, maybe you were running, maybe you were dancing on the table, drinking champagne, I don't know. But think about a time for you when you know you felt really, really well, and particularly the bit of your body which isn't as great as you want it to be at the moment, when that was really well. So you know it must have been well because of what you were doing. Really immerse yourself right now into that experience. If you want, close your eyes if it's safe to do that. Take yourself and really step into it and notice three things. Notice what you can see. As you're here in this place now, re-immersing yourself, notice the things you can see, the things you're aware of, the things that are close to you, things that are further away. And then notice the sounds you can hear. What sounds do you hear, either in your head, outside, as you immerse yourself into these experiences? And thirdly, what sensations you're aware of. What does your breathing feel like? What's your posture and stature like? How's your body feel as it moves? What's it like to be here? What sensations, what temperature? What's the quality of the air around you? As you build that, the more you spend time building that, the more you fire this new pathway. Now, if that's a pathway you haven't fired very often, it may take a while to really set into that. But if you follow those instructions, immerse yourself in it. Do not imagine or see yourself, immerse yourself into it. Notice what you can see. Notice what you can hear, all the silences, and notice the sensations of being here in this place. Then what you'll do is deeply focus your neurology into these states, and they will have a direct impact not only on stopping that old cycle, but creating new pathways for your brain to go down. The final thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just take a few minutes just to really relax and close your eyes. And as you do, I'd like you to just notice what it feels like to be aware of your hands. Just be aware of your hands. And as you are, there's a number of things that you can notice about your hands at first. Maybe you can notice the temperature. Maybe you can notice the weight, heaviness of those hands. Maybe you can even be aware of the positions of the fingers to start with. There's a number of things. And you may find that your attention just fades a little bit as you listen to me. And now I'd like you instead to focus on the difference between the two hands. On one hand, you'll notice one hand is slightly heavier. One hand maybe feels slightly cooler or warmer. And interestingly, one hand feels number than the other. As you notice that, which one is the most different? Is it this one or that one? Just notice which one it is. And whilst you're feeling that numbness, I'd like you to imagine what it would be like to be back in the snow when you were a kid. You know what it's like to play in the snow, it's so exciting. You run out, maybe got mittens on or gloves, or maybe no gloves at all. You're playing with the snow and having so much fun that after a while it takes you a bit of time to realise that your hands have gone cold and numb as a result of playing in the snow. You know that feeling of what it feels like to have no feeling. So much so that you can come in later on. It can be quite difficult to open the door because your hands are kind of stiff and numb. And then maybe you try and warm your hands up under a tap and you can just about feel the water flowing on your hands, but you can't actually feel the sensation itself. You can't tell whether the water is hot or cold, you can just tell there is water. And as you do that, as you listen to this, you'll find that one of your hands feels number than the other, and that probably both your hands feel number, or maybe stiller than the rest of your body. And what you're doing there is just generating the beginnings of anesthesia. Notice what that feels like. If you listen to this video a few times and replay this a number of times, each time you do it, the feelings will deepen. Then what you can do when they're really deep is you can imagine that numbness just spreading either up your arm or moving your hand to a place where you'd like to have more numbness. And as it spreads, or you move your hand, so you may slowly move your hand like this to an area of your body that you want to have numbness in. And just to have that numbness transfer. Or you can just feel it going up your arm slowly and comfortably to somewhere that you'd like to have it. And feel that feeling of no feeling that we have actually all the time for most of our body. And just switching that ability of your body and brain to just turn off sensations when appropriate. And then finally what I'd like you to do is just to recognize what you've learnt by looking at language, looking at influence and impact, looking at focus. Where are you focusing? Who's in charge of that? And taking yourself back to a time of healthy wellness, comfort and relaxation. And as you do, you can just notice your breathing, how that allows you to make sense of this on many levels, both in terms of cognitive and conscious understanding, but also helping those cycles, those pathways, those patterns to settle, to change, to relax. And then, when it feels right, bringing those new feelings and new awarenesses of how you can start to make a change to your body back into this room and to the rest of your day. What we've done today is just introduce you to some ideas and concepts, some tips and tricks that you can use to start to rewire your brain. There's loads more you can do. This is a 20-minute introduction. If you're interested, there's certainly courses that we run. The Lightning Process, of course, is the main course for chronic pain. But there's also some stuff online that we've done, both free stuff on YouTube about relaxation, the Life You Love seminars on Facebook, and some audio programs all about how to relax, how to de-stress, how to decrease pain, how to increase comfort, how to switch on anesthesia. So I hope you found that useful. Leave some comments if you've got any questions. I'll be answering them next week. Thanks for watching. See you guys soon, and share it around if you found it interesting. The more people that get to find out about this for free, the better. The happier we all are. See you later, guys. Bye.